Apollo Justice is the fourth game in the Ace Attorney series. It followed the critically acclaimed Ace Attorney trilogy, and it introduced a whole new cast of characters, and the game sold very well. But amongst the fanbase now, it's sort of this black sheep where some people really hate it. In this video, I'll discuss my thoughts on Apollo Justice Ace Attorney, and answer the question, where did Apollo Justice go wrong? In a similar vein to my Rise from the Ashes video, I'll give a summary of the game, but I'm not going to go into the details of every case. I'm just going to explain important story details. Apollo Justice starts off with a bang in Case 1. In it, a man, Shady Smith, is murdered during a poker game. We are introduced to Apollo Justice and his mentor, Christoph Gavin. Our defendant, Hobo Phoenix Wright. The first major point of contention among the fanbase, that will be discussed later in the video. Phoenix is very different in this game, a bit of a nihilist even. Basically, the big twist here is that your trusted mentor, Christoph Gavin, is the true killer, and later on in the game, we even learn that he's the one that got Wright disbarred. Once this starts to be unraveled, Phoenix begins acting as Apollo's mentor in the case, and by the end, the player is beginning to realize that they're a pawn in a much larger game, something that permeates throughout the rest of the game. The next case serves to set up several other main characters, but outside of it, it's not really memorable, which isn't exactly a bad thing. It's not remembered for being terrible, it's just average. First, I'll talk about Trucy Wright. Trucy acts as the Maya Fey of this game. She provides some light through what would otherwise be a pretty dark game. She's quirky like Maya, but in a different and more realistic way. Like Maya, she's hiding a pretty dark backstory under her youthful innocence, and I think the game does okay with it. It's not handled fantastically by any means, but it gets a pass. Though I do think the panty jokes were overused a bit. Clavier Gavin is the most underrated prosecutor, and it's a shame that the future titles throw him to the wayside. He's such a major contrast to any of the prosecutors that came before him, aside from parts of Miles Edgeworth, that it's honestly refreshing. He's just a dude. A nice dude who's focused on convicting the right person and not only victory. He's kind of like Trucy, where parts of him are just a caricature of a rock star, while Trucy is a magician. But it's really refreshing to have a prosecutor with some flair, which would become a trend, but Clavier was the first. Literally all of the prosecutors before him were pretty straight-laced, I-want-to-win types. The final chapter is also pretty different, as the big bad is the same as the first case. Basically, Christoph Gavin sets out to poison this dude and his daughter 7 years in the past because they know about the Phoenix Wright forgery, and it finally gets him 7 years later, and it almost gets the daughter too. In fact, his daughter is even arrested for the poisoning. This chapter is also the first time we experience two different trials in the same chapter. This chapter really dives into what led to the creation of Hobo Phoenix and why he hates Christoph Gavin so much. I mean, the whole chain of events leading to his disbarment came because Christoph was salty that Wright got chosen to defend Shady Smith over him. Like most other game's finals chapters, it's quite long. This case is primarily remembered for the Mason system, something that is really weird when you think about it. So basically, the Mason system is an in-universe video game that allows the player, in this case the jury, to play as Phoenix Wright and investigate the happenings of the case, both in the present and 7 years in the past. Phoenix Wright is the one who got this specific case to be chosen to use the jurist system. At the end, the player acting as jurist number 6 can pick the verdict. Obviously they pick guilty and the day is saved. But this system, and frankly a lot else about this case, is weird in canon. Firstly, the player can present things from the present in the past, which really doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, sure, it's all a video game, but exactly, it's all a video game. How is this stuff admissible in court? Secondly, why is Phoenix Wright, a person who was disbarred, allowed to be so close to a trial, straight up manipulating things behind the scenes to go his way? At this time, all Nick was known for in the public eye was being a forger, someone who can't be trusted. And lastly, the jurist system is literally never used again after this point in the timeline. I will never understand this last point. Did they just give up on it after seeing how BS the Mason system was? I guess we'll never know. You probably noticed that I completely skipped over the most infamous case from this game, Turnabout Serenade. That's because I felt it needed its own section. Alright, so this case starts off pretty interestingly. Apollo and Trucy are at a concert for Clavier Gavin's band, the Gaviners. In this first little section, we meet three characters, La Miroir, who I will hereby refer to as Thalissa for the rest of this video because I will never be able to pronounce her stage name properly, Maki Tabai, and Romain Latouche. all from the fictional country of Borginia. By the end of the night, Latus ends up dead, shot with a very powerful .44 revolver, and Maki is arrested for the crime. Honestly though, this entire case is just a huge mess. Logic is simply removed several times during this case. First of all, why is Maki arrested? The game states that a normal adult could dislocate their shoulder by using the murder weapon, so why is a young kid like Maki completely unaffected? Even worse, the primary reason Maki gets arrested is because someone moved the body from a room backstage all the way to the stage, and when the body is found again, Maki is just lying there with it. Literally, how could someone like him drag this massive piece of man meat all the way over there? And why would he just fall asleep next to the body? The police in this case are so stupid. And then there's the infamous Guitar Serenade section. I've never seen one part of an Ace Attorney game so universally hated amongst the fanbase. It's yet another video section like the Evidence Room murder in Rise from the Ashes, and man oh man, it's somehow worse. Like, the video was funny and all on a first or second viewing. You have Clavier looking like if Trump ran through a Cheeto factory, and then his guitar lights on fire and you see him desperately trying to put it out in the end. But the damn thing plays at least 20 times it feels like. This case is worse than Big Top. I don't care. At least that case made some amount of sense. Phoenix's character in this game is another point of hurt for many fans. I mean, he wasn't even supposed to be in the game, but Capcom made Takumi put him in. He's so very different from the character we knew from before. He's more about doing whatever it takes to prove the right person guilty, which he was before, but he takes it to the extreme here. In the first case, he literally forges evidence and has no qualms about doing so. I think this drastic of a character shift is a system shock to players, as in the previous game, they were seeing normal Nick. In the player's mind, 7 years hadn't passed, which is why I think people hate this change. If in some alternate universe we got a few more games before Apollo Justice with Nick's character shifting slowly, I think the fanbase would have reacted a lot better. Emma Skye, who's this game's primary detective, also shifts from the last time we saw her in Rise from the Ashes. She's pretty emo in this game, but it makes sense when you look at it. She lost out on her dream job of being a forensic scientist and was instead a homicide detective, and now she works with Clavier Gavin, who she hates. As a protagonist, Apollo Justice is a bit less of a blank slate personality than Phoenix Wright was in his first appearance, but he has no backstory. Like, what did this dude do before the game? What motivates him? I don't know. They even overcompensate later and give him like 26 backstories. Like, he doesn't exactly need a backstory, but this is just one puzzle piece of many in what will eventually become my answer to the title of this video. I do like his special power though. It's a nice way to change up the trials, which were pretty much routine before this. The perceive mechanic works well in my opinion and isn't all that difficult. Investigations are a bit less compelling as there's no psych locks to unlock anymore, outside of Chapter 4, but it's a fair trade-off. The side characters in this game are about what you'd expect from Ace Attorney up to this point. They're just there. You'll probably forget about most of them by the time you're through Dual Destinies. Before I answer the video title, I'll share my favorite music tracks from the game. The soundtrack is fantastic. A 10 out of 10 if this was one of my typical review videos. My favorite tracks are Alright, now I can finally answer the video title. In my opinion, the game went wrong as soon as Capcom forced Shu Takumi to include Phoenix Wright in the game. Now, there's a way to make the game more compelling while including Phoenix, and even Hobo Phoenix, but the way that Takumi did it just wasn't very good in my opinion. This was Phoenix Wright 4. Apollo is the player character, but he's just a side character stuck in the middle of a legal battle between two giants. Even the final twist at the end of the game is mentioned later in the series. Remember, Apollo and Trixie are actually siblings. That's just about the only backstory we get for Apollo, and it comes at the very end of the game. The final chapter is literally entirely about Phoenix. Apollo has zero reason to give any fucks about the chapter personally, which is a serious contrast from just about every other final chapter in the series. And he doesn't even really win in the end. He wins off of luck due to the jury system. If Shu Takumi decided to write a story about Apollo Justice and not one about Phoenix Wright, I think that people would look back on this game very differently. And the pieces are there for a great game too. Unfortunately, Capcom just didn't capitalize. Despite all that I've said, I don't hate this game at all. I'd put it right up there with Justice for All. 3 of the cases are at least decent, with 1 stinker in there. That isn't so uncommon for Ace Attorney though. I think that this game is slightly overhated by the more vocal people in the community, but a lot of criticisms of it ring true, several of which I mentioned in this video. However, I have sort of an alternate universe in my head where Capcom decided to launch a new trilogy with Apollo Justice as the protagonist. In fact, this is where my next long scripted video is gonna go. This video was made to be a precursor for it. Be on the lookout for that. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. See ya.